Hello everybody and welcome back to Expert Examiner IELTS. My name is Glyn and in this video I'm going to do some more writing feedback. Remember, if you'd like me to check your IELTS writing, join one of my groups. I'm on Facebook and Telegram, links in the description. But let's get into today's essay question. It's an IELTS essay, academic, Task 2, and we start as always by reading the question, analysing the question, thinking about what we need to do in the question, thinking about our structure. Let's have a look. So, it is unfair, it's not fair, it's wrong, it's bad that professional athletes, so this is sportsmen and women, footballers, tennis players, boxers, things like this, professional athletes earn so much more. So earn, means they get money for their job. They earn so much more than people with more important occupations. So people with more important occupations, such as doctors and engineers. To what extent do you agree or disagree? So let's think about this, right? What is this point of view that is debatable? Well, athletes, footballers earn lots of money. In some cases, they earn, millions of dollars a month or something. Maybe some of them do earn millions of dollars a month, whereas the average doctor or the average engineer doesn't. And the idea is that, doctors and engineers, they are important for society, and therefore, in a fair society, the people doing the more important work should be rewarded better with more money. That's this idea. And as a candidate now, you need to say to what extent do you agree or disagree, which means you can choose to completely agree, to partially agree, to completely disagree, to partially disagree. You can take a middle position. In my opinion, as someone that likes to take as few risks as possible, I would simply choose to agree or disagree with that point of view. Okay, so thinking about structure here, in our introduction, we want to introduce the subject, which is, people's earnings, what the amount of money people get for the work that they do. We want to explain this issue. We want to explain clearly this point that there is a belief out there that it's unfair for sports people to earn so much more compared to doctors and engineers. And then in the introduction, we also need to state our position. So we need to say if we agree or disagree, or how strongly we agree or how strongly we disagree. We don't need to put our reasons why in the introduction. You can save that for the body. It's not always a bad idea to do that. In my opinion, you just don't need it. And that's not what we need. But if you agree with this position, that it's unfair, then body paragraph 1 will be reason 1 why it's unfair, and an explanation, an example, development. And then body paragraph 2 will be reason 2 why it's unfair, an explanation, development. Now, some people also add a third paragraph for balance. They try to show, why some people have the other point of view. You can do that, and sometimes it can help with topic development to show that you're diving into the topic in the deepest possible way. If you're aiming for a band 9, might even be a good thing to do that. I generally, most people are happy enough with a band 7 or 8, so I generally advise people not to do that. But yeah, you can do that. You can show what the other point of view is in order to debunk it or to show why it's not true. That's fine. And then in the conclusion, we want a short, sharp summary of your main ideas. And then I like some reflective comment at the end too. So 4 paragraphs are plenty. 5 paragraphs also, it's fine. Let's have a look at what our candidate has. Just looking at the balance of the essay, 1, 2, 3, 4. So we have 4 paragraphs. That's good news. I also like the fact that, the introduction and the conclusion are shorter than the body paragraphs. That's the correct balance. Most of our essay should be the body paragraphs. I will say that conclusion maybe just looks slightly short, but that's okay. No big deal. IELTS examiners aren't really given specific training on how on what the best essay should look like, right? There's nothing in the IELTS examiner training that says, like, this is an ideal essay, it must be 4 paragraphs, it must be 5 paragraphs, you need to do this, you can't do this. There are some hard caps, there are some, you have to paragraph, you have to state a position, that position has to be clear, but there's not really, examiners do have different ideas about what makes a great essay. Yeah, so when I say that I prefer a slightly longer conclusion, that's Glyn the teacher speaking, not necessarily Glyn the examiner. But let's have a look at this essay. Enough of my rambling. Let's see what the candidate has written and let's see what level the candidate is at. And another thing, even though examiners might have some differences in what they like or what they don't like, generally there is, pretty close consensus on band scores. Sometimes 0.5 difference is normal, but in general, we can identify C2s, C1s, and B2s. Anyway, let's take a look. So in recent decades, the salaries of professional sports people have risen dramatically, often surpassing those of academic professionals such as doctors and engineers. Okay, so we get that background information. It feels maybe slightly, is it templatey? I know a lot of people like to use this in recent decades and then use present perfect. Is this a recent phenomenon? And so I don't mind people using in recent decades and then present perfect, but it has to be relevant to the subject. And I don't know if this is really something that's happened in recent decades. So, we're in 2025 now. It's arguable whether this is a new development in recent decades, but maybe the last 4 decades, perhaps. So okay, it is very accurate in terms of grammar and vocabulary so far. Have risen, third form of rise, good. We get a nice adverb of manner. Nice use of participle there, often surpassing. Surpass is a great word. Those of, so really good reference word. This is very C1, C2-ish already. Those of academic professionals such as doctors and engineers. Cool. Because of this disparity, it is a disparity, some people started. So I don't like the use of past simple here. It feels a bit strange. Present perfect is better. So I'm just going to put a little red around that. Because of this disparity, some people have started arguing that such high salaries for athletes are unfair. Okay. So we get this nice background sentence. We get the paraphrase of the question or the issue that it's unfair. Good. I completely disagree with this idea, as their contribution. So problem with the word their here. Whose? I guess you mean athletes, but athletes isn't really the noun here, right? The head noun is salary. High salaries for athletes. So this use of their, I mean, I know you're talking about athletes, but it's doing a lot of work. It is a slightly ambiguous reference word, just slightly. Their contribution to their home country is far more significant than, I don't like it when there are typos, but okay, than those of academic professionals. Okay, so the candidate is making the argument, and I feel I don't like I don't love it when candidates put their reasons for their position in the introduction. I feel like that's what the body paragraphs are for. But again, this is teacher Glyn speaking, not examiner Glyn. But okay, I completely disagree with this idea, their contribution. So the candidate has set it up now in the introduction as saying that the contribution of athletes is far more significant than those of academic professionals. So let's see whether, and now you're stuck to this. I don't think you can really introduce new arguments. Now you need to find 2 arguments that say that the contribution of athletes is far more significant than academic professionals. But notice that academic professionals, being a doctor and being an engineer, those are not academic professions. I mean, sometimes, doctors, they do lecturing work and things like this, and they write research papers, but most of the work that doctors and engineers do is not academic. So, that academic professionals, it's a bit odd. Anyway, let's see. So, professional sports people play a pivotal role in shaping people's opinions about the country. So, again, we have a slightly strange reference word. Which country? I don't know. The country on a global level. Okay? Their success in an international tournament, like the World Cup or the Olympics, often increases foreigners' interests about, maybe in is better, but about is okay, about their nation's background. I'm we've spent a while setting this up, and I don't feel wholly informed here. But let's see. Leading to increased awareness is probably better. I know you might think awareness is an uncountable noun, so we shouldn't use or un, but there's this crazy rule in English that sometimes when we put adjectives before uncountable nouns, we use and un. Crazy. An increased awareness. A good working knowledge. It's strange. Leading to increased awareness of its existence. Again, it talks about the country, but I do think that this reference word, again, is a bit strange. And I don't really see. We're not. The candidate is just saying that professional sports people are important. But the question is really, is it unfair that their salaries are so high compared with doctors? And so the focus of the essay, I want the focus of the essay to be on the earnings that they receive. And the candidate is, it just seems to be that the focus is on the importance of professional sports people. But it is, it is linked. Those people who have a positive global image can showcase their country's culture and tradition. You're just saying the same thing, I think, thereby enhancing. So the candidate does make good use of these participle clauses, which sometimes makes me think that candidates are using AI, because I know ChatGPT absolutely loves participle clauses, but it doesn't look crazy AI-ish, thereby enhancing the, we get another typo here. Don't like typos. Please check your work. Their cultural values. Enhancing their cultural values is not informative, right? Though, let's read this again. Those people who have a positive global image can showcase their country's culture and tradition, thereby enhancing their cultural values. It feels a bit generic. I don't really understand what that means, but let's have a look. For example, Lionel Messi, one of the top world ranked footballers. Again, world ranked? Don't really use that. Football's not like a ranking event. Tennis is a ranking event. Golf is a ranking event. In football, they don't have rankings of players. Often displays Argentinian traditions positively in mass media. What does that mean for Lionel Messi to display Argentinian traditions positively? So I'm not informed. The topic development and the explanatory power of the writing is quite weak. Grammar, great. Vocabulary, great. Coherence and cohesion, okay. But the task response in terms of informing the reader, it's weak. This promotion, in turn, shapes the nation's identity as well as fades possible. I don't know what it means to fade a misconception. Fade something away? I don't know this phrase verb, to fade something away. I know fade away in an intransitive sense. It faded away, but fades possible misconceptions away. That's a bit odd about this country. So this whole paragraph, I get, the main idea is that sports people are important. Sports people promote their countries and they spread that country's value to other people, like Lionel Messi. I don't see that in and of itself as a justification for why they deserve more money. You're just saying that sports people are important. And it's too easy to think, yeah, but doctors also play a pivotal role, right? So why is it fair for sports people to earn more than doctors? And we're not really addressing that issue. You're only saying that sports people, they play an important role. Anyway, I will say, though, the candidate's language is very, very strong. Despite a couple of inappropriacies, the candidate's language is definitely C1-ish. Moreover, and in part C2-ish too, moreover, comma, unlike doctors or engineers, comma, professional athletes can contribute to a country's economic growth. Are you saying that doctors and engineers can't contribute to a country's economic growth? You could say that professional athletes contribute more to a country's economic growth, but your sentence is too general, it's too simplistic, and it's just wrong. Doctors and engineers' work also contributes to a country's economic growth. Academic professionals typically pay taxes through the salary that they are given from the government's budget, comma, and this amount often accounts for a small portion of national revenue. Okay. In contrast, athletes' earnings often earnings, plural, singular, comes from various sources, comma, such as government. You can't. So I'm going to explain what's wrong here. You're saying, on the one hand, academic professionals get money from the government. But on the other hand, in contrast, athletes get money from the government. That doesn't work. That's not a contrast. That's in addition. But there are other sources of income for sure. So, if you're going to use in contrast, only show the contrasting sources of income. Fan support. If they get income from fan support, you need to explain that better. And negotiations with business enterprises. Again, I don't know what that means when you say athletes' earnings come from negotiations with business enterprises. I just can't quite make sense of that. You have to be clearer. Furthermore, if a sports player becomes a legionnaire, not sure. I don't know this word legionnaire. It's very possible that it exists. Probably it does, and probably it's used correctly. I just don't know this word. Becomes a legionnaire, comma, they would receive a salary from another country's budget, comma, but at the same time they would pay taxes for their home country as well. Such contributions can boost the national economic growth. I don't know really if salaries from sport, of taxes on salaries from sports people, how much that really boosts national economic growth. I think that's a kind of a weird point to make. And also, if you paid, and the problem here is if doctors and engineers were also paid crazy amounts of money from business enterprises, that money could also be taxed and sent back. So, yeah, but again, very good language. But in terms of making and supporting an argument, we have a very noticeable weakness. In conclusion, although professional athletes' high income may raise questions about its justification, I don't know what ITS is doing here either. ITS is referring to who? Although professional athletes' high income may raise questions. Okay, about ITS meaning the income. Okay, I firmly believe that, comma, since they can shape, and again, they, not quite sure who they is. You know who they is in your mind, but they, I guess, refers to athletes, but it's a little bit ambiguous. They can shape their nation's identity and image as well as contribute to economic growth, comma, they undoubtedly deserve the amount. Okay, undoubtedly is quite strong. I don't think you've really shown that they undoubtedly deserve the amount that they're receiving. But what I will say about the candidate, again, I will repeat that the candidate's language is incredible. I really hope the candidate is using their own language. I hope the candidate isn't using ChatGPT or anything like that. If you want to use ChatGPT in your own time, in your preparation, fine. For real tests and for mock tests, don't use ChatGPT because it gives you a false impression of your level. But I don't think, I would say probably I'm 60% of me thinks that this is the candidate's authentic language, and 40% of me thinks maybe they've had help from sitting with a template or using ChatGPT or something like this. But I think it is the candidate's own authentic language. So cool. So getting into scores, I think it is fairly easy to score. I think coherence and cohesion, for me, too many ambiguous reference words to get higher, but 7. We do have a couple of inappropriacies with lexical resource and a couple of inappropriacies with grammar, bringing the score down to 8. But we do have a wonderful variety of vocab and grammar. Candidate does show a lot of skillful use of complex structures and topic-specific language. So for that reason, 8, high C1, borderline C1, C2 for the lexical resource and grammar, possibly, knocking on the door of the 9 with those things, but just a few too many inappropriacies. So the real question is with task response. So what do we get with task response? So why isn't it an 8, first of all? Well-developed position, for me, it's not a clear and well-developed position. Ideas are not well extended and supported, in my opinion. Looking at band 7, a clear and developed position. Okay, we do get the clear position, right? We do know that the candidate strongly disagrees with the idea that it's unfair to pay these sports people. That's what we do know. So the position is clear. It's just main ideas are extended, yes, and supported kind of. There's an attempt to support there, but there may be a tendency to overgeneralize, a lack of focus. It seems 7ish. Let's just take a look at the 6. Main part of the prompt are addressed. Some may be more fully covered than others. No, we're better than that. Appropriate format is used, yes. A position is presented that is directly relevant to the point, but conclusions drawn may be unclear, unjustified, or repetitive. Now, I'm leaning towards this, that I think the support is insufficiently developed, and as a result, that position that it's fair to pay sports people, I feel like from this essay that position is unjustified, and so for that reason I'm going to award a 6 for task response. So overall, what does that give us? That gives us a score of 7.0 overall. Well, it's 7.25, but it reduces to a 7.0. Let's just make sure that my maths are correct. 8877 would be 7.5. 8876 is 7.25. That rounds down to 7.0 overall. So still in that C1 range, but the candidate is underperforming. The candidate's language level is much higher than the candidate's academic skills, right? And so this is good news for the candidate because it's really, really difficult to learn the language. Learning the skills of academic writing, learning the skills of making and supporting arguments, that's much easier than learning the language. So keep going. Your grammar and vocab, both great. Be careful with how you use reference words like they, their, its, and so on, because sometimes it's not immediately clear. The use of reference words stops the reader in their tracks and they have to go, they probably refers to athletes here, right? And we don't want that. We don't want the cohesive devices, the discourse markers, to draw the reader's attention too much. Paragraphing is fine. It's just the task response. So you can definitely get to 8 for coherence and cohesion, but my advice to the candidate is learn what an academic essay is, learn what a convincing argument is, learn what it means to present and support an argument that is directly relevant and academically persuasive. Yeah, but a decent job. Band 7.0, that's still C1, that's still good writing, and it's still, higher than the average that people get for writing. But yeah, let me know what you think. Are my marks too generous? Are my marks too harsh? Do you agree that the points that the candidate makes are just, just lacking in persuasion, or they're just not, they don't quite get at the heart of the question, right? We don't quite get why sports people deserve to be paid higher than doctors and engineers. We only see that, sports people do a good job of promoting the country's values, but we didn't quite get at the heart of the question, at least in my opinion. Um, yeah, let me know what you think. And of course, as always, if you'd like me to check your IELTS writing, or if you'd like a free practice speaking test with feedback, join one of my groups. I'm on Facebook and Telegram. For this writing, only 2 people submitted writing. So for this, you had a 50-50 chance of having your writing checked, which, is amazing. This is a service with an examiner that is sought after. It's wanted by many, many, many people on my Telegram channel, and on my Facebook, just 2 submissions. So, join the Facebook group too. You'll have a higher chance of getting either a speaking test or a writing check. Anyway, if you don't want to join the random process, if you want to pay for a speaking test or pay for a writing check, take a look at my website, expertexaminer.com. I have a full price list there of all of my services, but more videos from me coming soon. But for now,